camera on. Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So welcome back everyone from your intermission. For our next workshop, we have Dr. Jan Hirsch. She will be presenting on behalf of University of California, Irvine School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences and giving tips on the whole patient approach as a PharmD. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Jan Hirsch and give her a warm round of applause. Thank you. Welcome.
Just love virtual applause. That's wonderful. So I really wish we were in person on campus. This, oh my gosh, I know. So hang in there, everyone. This is a great event regardless. And I'm hoping you're learning a lot. I looked at the topics this morning and very practical things you're learning this morning. So I'm going to take you somewhere else. I want to just spend a very few minutes talking about sort of the whole patient approach of a pharmacist. So you all want to be pharmacists, and I'm very excited about that. It's a wonderful career. It absolutely is. So many things you can do with that. So I think you guys have my slides. Are pulling them up, or am I pulling them up?
I will pull them up for you. Before we begin, to our attendees, please direct your questions to our student question speaker, Tiffany, via chat. If time allots at the end of the presentation, your questions will be asked by then. And Dr. Hirsch, please note that our timer, Chantel, will be updating the chat as well as her Zoom background with 10 and 5-minute markers for your allotted time. So let me share my screen.
And I will look at the chat to make sure I'm following the time.
Alrighty. And without further ado, Dr. Hirsch.
Oh, okay. So my topic is PharmD roles and the whole patient approach. And if you go to the next slide, please. There you go. 3 short topics. 1, medications and the patient. 2, inside the pharmacist's head. And 3, the pharmacist patient care process. Next slide. So I want to introduce you to this concept. You're going to think this concept you already know about, and you do in some ways. It's this medication regimen complexity. Okay. So here's a typical regimen on the counter here. There are a lot of prescription medications. There are some over-the-counter medications here also. So I didn't count the number here, but you can count the number of medications, and that is an indication of the complexity of a patient's regimen that they're taking. But there are other things that actually contribute to that complexity that you need to think about. And one of those is the route of administration. So a number of these, most of these look like tablets, okay? And those are pretty easy to take. You take a tablet, it's easy. Yeah. But one of those actually, I believe, is an inhaler. Utilizing an inhaler takes more skill. It's more complex for a patient. They may not understand it. Think about injections. Insulin is an injection. Using an injection is much more complex for a patient to sort out in their head. And then the third element of medication regimen complexity is the directions for use and just monitoring these medications. So think about this from the patient's point of view. Directions for use, just on one of those bottles, would be take before meals, or take after meals, take at bedtime, take every other day. Yet the directions themselves can become very, very complex for one medication. Now put all those together, and you have a number of medications, different routes of administrations, each one of them has directions for use, different times of day. It becomes just really, really complex in the patient's head. Okay? And that is the role of the pharmacist that you first think about. And that is an extremely, extremely, extremely important role for the pharmacist. And it's not just medications. If you take anything away from here, it's not just a number of medications. There's all of this route of administrations and directions, which makes it difficult for a patient to manage. And that's a major part of the pharmacist's role. Next slide. Less than a minute. Okay, this is a study, and there's a reference here. The physician spends 26 seconds on guideline recommended components. That means why the patient should be taking a medication, and 23 seconds on all other aspects of a prescription when talking to patients about a new medication in an office visit that lasts about 16 minutes. That's less than a minute that the physician or prescriber has to actually tell a patient about a new medication. They just added to that medication regimen complexity. So the patient is still further confused. Next slide. And this is where the pharmacist comes in. I'm going to take you inside the pharmacist's head, and this is what you guys are going to be learning from the very first day that you set foot in pharmacy school. So we call this the spider web. Okay. So in the top right-hand corner there, this is the medication therapy management spider web, and there's a reference down on the left. And let me just walk you through this. So look in the very middle of this spider web, and there's a person with diabetes there. Right? Now look up on the top left-hand corner. We've got different shapes. Right? The different shapes are, if it is an oval, it's a clinical concern. If it is a triangle, the green triangle are comorbidities. These are other diseases the patient has, not the diabetes, but the patients have multiple diseases. And then the hexagon, which is blue, these are complications the patient may have. And then the rectangle, which is purple, socioeconomic and behavioral issues that are also present with this patient. So go back to the middle of the spider web, and then look at the first part of the web right around the patient. Those are the things that are most pressing for the pharmacist and the patient to talk about today at this visit. But look at all the other things that are also in the periphery for that patient that the pharmacist in their head working with the patient is trying to sort out. So the idea of the spider web is the things that are closest to the patient are the things that need to be taken care of at this visit, if we're talking about one visit. Right. So for example, the clinical here, I think is, I have to look, glycemic control, weight gain, weight control. Then this patient also has lipids, hyperlipidemia, hypertension. They also have some complications that the pharmacist is considering that needs to talk to the patient about. So those need to be taken care of today. Right. Now what happens the next visit? If you imagine when you push on a spider web, if you push on the spider web, all those things can rearrange themselves. And different things come closer to the patient and other things go farther away from the patient. So the situation changes the next time you see the patient. So for example, if you look up here on the top right, there's cooking groceries and living situation and finances. Let's assume the patient lost their job. Okay? That finances would move directly to the patient. It would move in closer to the patient, and that could actually affect their access to the medication, their access to healthy foods, a number of things that are going to affect that patient's diabetes. So in the pharmacist's head, and what you're going to learn, and this actually is a good tool for learning, is all of these things are focusing together. They're working together. And I hope you feel now this is complex, and this is a major role for the pharmacist, is helping that patient sort this out, not just at one visit, but over time, because it changes. Next slide, please. Oh. So that's the original spider web in the middle there. Now, if you look to the left, what I've added is a whole other component that could be incorporated here that the pharmacist needs to incorporate, integrative health. So things like massage, acupuncture, nutritional consults, yoga, lifestyle coaching, a lot of other things you can think about too. The pharmacist is beginning and should take into account these other things that might help the patient or the patient might already be utilizing. So it's not just the biomedical model that I showed here in the original spider web. And then next slide. Now I've added over on the right-hand side also public health, major right now, right? This is the pharmacist or just giving immunizations, point of care testing, that's POC, point of care testing. We can think of this all in COVID terms, but even before COVID and after COVID, there will be this role for the pharmacist, screening test. And then the last thing I mentioned in the public health is that this is linked to social services. The pharmacist can make lots of connections for the patients, both within the spider web with physicians, providers, nurses, clinics, but outside of the spider web into more different integrative health modalities, massage, acupuncture, and all of the practitioners there And then really, really importantly, I think we're seeing pharmacy becoming more of a public health resource and working more closely with our social services just overall. You know. So I hope looking at that, you do get the feeling of this person is in the middle, but it's a whole patient. There's so much going on with that patient. And the pharmacist can be really a real asset to that patient and just helping to send them to the right places, talk to them about their choices, and utilize the results of their efficacy and safety for those medications to move the patient along. Next slide, please. And it all fits with this. This is the patient care process, the pharmacist patient care process, the PPCP. You will see this, I guarantee you, the first week of pharmacy school. You know, this is what guides us. Right? So let me just walk you through it quickly. At the top, it is collecting information. That spider web and that other thing, lots of information. Collecting the information, assessing the information as you move down to the right. Assessing the information, what's important right now, what can wait, etc. Making a plan down on the bottom right. Making a plan with the patient and with other providers or healthcare resources. Then implementing the plan, and then moving up on the left-hand side, follow up, monitoring, and evaluating that plan. What happened? You can't just say, all right, here's a plan, go forth and do that. It's the pharmacist's responsibility to monitor and evaluate what happened. Then once you know what's happening, you're collecting more information, and it continues that. And it's over time with the patient. This patient is in the middle, patient-centered, but you can see going around the dark blue circle, communication with the patient is essential. Communication with all of those other providers and healthcare resources is essential. Documenting, if you don't write it down, people don't know about it. It didn't happen. You've got to document to know what you did, to assess it, and to communicate it. And then collaboration. And then if a spider web didn't make you feel anything, you should say there's a lot of people that the patient needs to collaborate with and the pharmacist needs to collaborate with. It's team-based care. Next slide, I think is the last slide. So just in summary of the whole patient approach that pharmacists are now taking and expanding, it is treating the whole person as their physical health, their mental health, social well-being, their spiritual well-being, and in the environment. Is delivered collaboratively with a wide range of healthcare professionals. And I should have just put resources also, not just healthcare professionals. That public health component is a growing importance. It's interprofessional and team-based. It blends a wide range of modalities, both conventional and complementary. And it's very clearly supported by something that we live by, which is the pharmacist patient care process. And I think my time is almost up, so I will just end there, and I'm happy to take any questions or thoughts even.
Hello, Dr. Hirsch. We have a few questions. The first question is, what are your thoughts on the outlook of pharmacy and the pharmacist's role in the future to account for the market saturation?
I actually think that my slide about the spider web and all that was going on, can we go back to the one with has the public health and that? The role of the pharmacist is increasing. It's expanding. You guys are going to help it grow. And where it's going right now is integrating all of these components, becoming much more of a public health resource. There are roles out there that we don't know about yet. Our healthcare system needs help. I think everyone is quite aware of that, and it's one of the things I actually study. You know, we're creating new roles for the pharmacist to help the healthcare system, improve the healthcare system. So I think a lot of roles aren't even there yet.
Okay, the next question we have is, the spider web seems very intricate. Do you have any advice for future pharmacy students in learning the components of medication therapy?
Yes. And first of all, I will commend you to say this is that you noted this is extremely intricate. But you know what? You're going to know all this. This is what you're going to learn in pharmacy school. You know, this is not going to be strange to you. It will not seem intricate. It will be in your head. You know, this is all these pieces, this is what you're going to learn. I think the tip I would give you, as you start out in pharmacy school, think about the patient, always. Think beyond the medications. The medications can be safe and effective, but a lot of things have to happen for them to be safe and effective. And the pharmacist can control a lot of those things and help the patient control a lot of those things. And so as you go through pharmacy school, it is the science you need to understand that science. The science changes. You've got to be able to interpret that for the patient. They're in a very complex world. You need to be able to translate for the patient. And then that's the science piece, but the other, be aware of the environment. These socioeconomic factors, they really affect health.
The next question we have is, how has COVID-19 impacted the role of the pharmacist? Will anything change post-COVID?
I think it's over here in this public health side of this diagram. The good thing about COVID, if there's any good thing, and there's not really, but the pharmacist's role is being recognized as much more important. We're becoming much more visible. Same thing with pharmacist technicians, but the whole pharmacy is becoming much more visible. And in doing that, the potential of pharmacists is being recognized more than it ever would have if we didn't have COVID, unfortunately. A lot of things have changed, allowing the pharmacists to be more proactive, do more things on their own for COVID. I expect those changes will continue. I think it will be an expansion of the scope of the pharmacist practice. Now, exactly how that is, I do believe it's going to become more public health. And I really believe there are tremendous opportunities there for that.
Do you have any advice for students who are currently on the fence about applying to pharmacy school?
I think what I would, and this is what I've always told everyone, is you need to think about what do you want to do? What kinds of things do you want to do with your life? And then think about that, and then think, okay, here's pharmacy. What are the other things you're thinking about? Nursing, physician, whatever, science, maybe just PhD or something. Think about how you can see yourself not in those other roles, perhaps, or not in pharmacy, but you see yourself in the other roles. You need to go through your head and rule out other things. You are not going to know the right answer, but I believe you will have a feeling of, okay, I thought about those other possibilities for me. I don't want those. I think I want pharmacy, or I think I want nursing, whatever it turns out to be. So the point is to really think about those other things and rule them in or out, so that you've given yourself that chance to think that through.
The next question we have is, how does the mindset of a pharmacist vary across the different fields of pharmacy?
That's a good question. I'd really have to think about that a bit, but my initial thought, it doesn't. I think, and I'll tell you why I say that. I've worked in multiple types. I've worked in pharmaceutical industry, I've worked in managed care, I've worked in community pharmacy, I've worked in academia, and you ask me what I am a pharmacist. That never changed. Everything I've done, whether I have been in those other things, that's what I am. I'm a pharmacist. This is in my head. So I think you apply it differently, and there's so many different places that pharmacists can work. And again, those roles are evolving and being created. You're still a pharmacist. That's my opinion.
The final question is, how or when did you know that you wish to pursue pharmacy?
It seems like that's an easy question, but actually, it was a process of me going through and kind of ruling out things. I basically was in a parking lot walking to my music class, and I thought, pharmacy, that fits. And I had thought about medicine, I thought about nursing, I thought about engineering, and I just finally sorted it out. And I remember the place I was. And it was like, that's it. It's got science, which I like, and it's got people. And the other ones didn't have that same mix. And I think pharmacy is a nice mix.
Thank you, Dr. Hirsch, for answering all our questions and presenting to us today. Can we please get a warm round of applause for Dr. Hirsch?
Just love that virtual applause. I look forward to seeing you all at some place down the line in person.
At this time, a 5-minute break will ensue. Please feel free to stretch and use the restroom if needed. However, please make sure that you return to this room for the Dean and School Representative panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hirsch.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Dr. Hirsch.
Thank you all.